For today's first pitch, we're breaking out the old baseball dictionary once again, looking into the term the Mendoza Line. It's a baseball term when a player's batting average goes below 200. You can even hear it outside sometimes of baseball and other sports, or as a metaphor for, other situations when people are underperforming. For example, as a husband, he's really below the Mendoza line.
Well, you're not talking about you because, babe, you're way higher. You're like Aaron Judge last season. I think he hit a 331.
Well, I'm touched.
Oh.
I was even out last night and had a beer that was called the Mendoza Line. It was a pretty basic lager with probably the lowest alcohol by volume of the whole set of beers on tap.
Oh, now I get it. That's right, because it's the lowest alcohol volume. That's clever.
Well, the term comes from shortstop Mario Mendoza, who played 9 seasons in the majors for the Pirates, Mariners, and Rangers between 1974 and 82. Mendoza was actually a pretty good defensive shortstop. He really wouldn't have lasted 9 years in the majors if he wasn't one. But the term was clearly created because he wasn't a great hitter. But ironically, Mendoza had a batting average above the Mendoza line with .215 over his career.
Did you say ironically? Are you using that correctly?
Well, probably not, I guess. Ever since that Alanis Morissette song, I really am not sure anymore. So who's responsible for this rather disparaging phrase? Well, it was first popularized when George Brett had a conversation with ESPN's Chris Berman. I really miss Chris Berman and his quirky nicknames. I remember some of my favorites, like when he called Bert Blyleven, Bert Be Home Blyleven, or Dave Parker, Dave Parallel Parker.
I remember he would call Sammy Sosa, Sammy, say it ain't Sosa.
Yeah, that's a good one too. But Mendoza actually said it probably came a year earlier from one of his Mariners teammates, either Tom Paciorek or Bruce Bochy. Now, that's different from the manager Bruce Bochy.
Ah.
Well, Bruce Bochy deserves his own episode here.
Oh, my gosh. With all of the episode ideas you have, we're going to be posting episodes daily to keep up.
Well, I got the ideas. I'm willing to record them, but I really don't think our listeners want daily episodes.
Yeah, I don't think so. Let us know, though. But you do have a day job.
Well, for now. I mean, this thing's going to take off.
It will.
In 9 seasons in the majors, though, Mario Mendoza did hit below his own line 5 times. After the MLB, he returned to Mexico in '83, played 7 seasons for the Mexican League, and he hit a decent average of .291. Now, recently, it should be noted that in the majors, batting average has trended downward over the past 25 years. In 2000, it was .270, and last year was .245. So with that decline, more and more players every season at some point do dip below the Mendoza line. But the term still comes up with announcers and commentators. At first, Mario Mendoza wasn't too fond of the phrase, but eventually he came around, didn't mind it so much, even tried to copyright it. But, wouldn't you know, someone already got there to it.
Maybe I could use that for my fantasy baseball. It's a cool name, the Mendoza Line.
Oh, come on. You should use a more optimistic name. You're going to win it all this year.
Oh, you give a girl a dream. But before we get too far off base, let's start the episode.
Hello and welcome to Fungos and Fastballs, the podcast of baseball history and trivia. I'm your host, Jerry Dines, and each episode will be a snapshot into America's pastime. Maybe it'll be a player, a tradition, a stadium, a rule, or some random fun aspect of the game. So let's get on to today's topic. Here at Fungos and Fastballs, we discuss not only the players and games, but we try to capture some of those iconic and even crazy moments where the sport itself intersects with pop culture, history, and as such, we bring you an iconic day in baseball, Disco Demolition Night. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing 4-on-the-floor rhythm characteristics of disco music.
Say what now?
I can't discuss disco rhythm.
Well, is this our podcast? I thought there's some baseball here.
I thought, since it's been a while since disco's been popular, people might want to revisit that. But no. We should discuss baseball. And we are going to discuss. We're going to discuss White Sox owner Bill Veeck and his promotions, the genesis of who thought destroying disco records in the middle of a doubleheader seemed like a good idea at the time, the day itself, the aftermath, plus another doomed promotion by the Dodgers in 1995. But let's go to Disco Demolition Night, July 12th, 1979, in Comiskey Park in Chicago, which was where the White Sox called home between 1910 and 1990. First to the disco era, bell bottoms, strobe lights, mirror balls. I love it. A little I Will Survive, a little Chic, Les Freak. Brooke, are you a disco fan?
Disco certainly is not dead in the Dines household. I'm not a huge disco fan, but give me any ABBA and Dancing Queen.
Is that your favorite song?
No, not my favorite song. It's probably my favorite group. I do like a little Donna Summer, and my favorite is Who Left That Cake Out in the Rain?
MacArthur Park.
MacArthur Park.
MacArthur Park. You'll never find that recipe again.
Never. Now, you're not asking me which version I prefer. We got two out there.
Well, the Richard Harris isn't disco.
It's got its own little quaintness to it.
I like Last Dance, but let me tell you something. In the summer of 79, not everybody was enchanted with disco. The soundtrack to Saturday Night Fever basically spent 120 weeks on the album charts between 1977 and 1980. And the summer of 79, the number one songs were all disco. Hot Stuff by Donna Summer, Ring My Bell, Good Times by Chic. And, for a lot of reasons, there was backlash. Now, it could be oversaturation, could be that even rock artists like the Rolling Stones and Kiss were releasing disco numbers, Rod Stewart. Many people cite that because disco music comes out of gay and urban culture, that some racism and homophobia probably played a role as well. But whatever it was, I remember specifically being young and disco sucks t-shirts all over the place. I even remember seeing the movie Airplane, and they have that great scene where the airplane is coming down, and there's a radio tower, and they say, WZAZ in Chicago, where disco lives forever. And the plane hits the tower, and in the theater I was at, everybody cheered.
That's funny.
Well, and a little trivia, Brooke.
Yes, because it is baseball history and trivia.
Fans of Airplane will note that WZAZ in Chicago were the directors of Airplane, Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker. So maybe I should get back to baseball. So into this situation is shock jock Chicago DJ Steve Dahl, who had his share of kooky promotions. Over the course of his career, he did a live on-air vasectomy. He told motorists to use Necco wafers on Chicago tollways instead of coins, and there were a few broken toll machines. He had been fired in 1978 by a rival station when it switched from rock to disco. And because of that, and because of just his dislike for the music, he formed an anti-disco army, the Insane Coho Lips. And they had early promotions. They would show up at discos randomly and create havoc. So Dahl's radio station, WLUP in Chicago.
And by the way, that's pronounced The Loop.
The Loop, not
Yes.
Lup.
No, Loop.
Okay. Well, that was his new radio station, and they came up with a honey of an idea, and they approached Mike Veeck, who was the promotion director for the Chicago White Sox at the time. Now, if the name Veeck is familiar to you baseball fans, it's because Mike's dad, Bill Veeck, was the owner of the Chicago White Sox. Brooke, Bill Veeck is a Hall of Fame owner, and he really needs his own episode.
I was worried you were going to say that. But listeners, be happy to know I bought a new notebook.
So good. So the old notebook's filled. We can come up with new podcast ideas
Start
now.
sending me your suggestions.
Well, even though we're going to do an episode eventually on Veeck, a little information. He began as a minor league owner back in 1940 and then wound up owning the Cleveland Indians, then the St. Louis Browns before they moved to Baltimore and became the Orioles. And then in the early 60s, the Chicago White Sox, which he sold when he was having health issues, but then bought again in 75. And, just to give you a sense of Bill Veeck, all you'd have to do is know the titles of his autobiographies. Veeck as in wreck, and The Hustler's Handbook. He had a famous quote, "You can draw more people with a losing team plus bread and circuses than with a losing team and a long, still silence." So he had some honeys of promotions. He once tried to give away a Black Angus bull. He had Grandstand Managers Night where fans got to vote on whether there should be bunts or steals. And in 1951, he brought in 3'7" Eddie Goodell for an at-bat in a game. Still the shortest player to ever have an at-bat at baseball. Needless to say, Veeck and Dahl had some, again, not always classy ideas for promotion. So it made sense when the radio station approached promotion director Mike Veeck to say, hey, in the middle of a doubleheader, why don't we have people bring in their disco records, collect them in a bin, and explode it in the middle of center field between the games? What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
So that brings us to one fateful night in Thursday, July 12th, 1979, when there was a twilight doubleheader. Twilight, where the first game is in the late afternoon and the second game's at night, and the White Sox were facing off against the Detroit Tigers. And if you brought your own disco record, it was 98 cents admission.
That's because it was the station number, 98 FM.
For double loop.
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 Like the Chicago Loop.
Yes, like the Chicago Loop. So yeah, bring a disco record. And the plan was to gather it all, as I said, bin at center field and blow them up between the games. The Sox had not had a good season up to then. They were 40 and 46. And Comiskey, it had a capacity of over 44,000, but I mean, they would get maybe 12,000, 15,000 at the most. They were really hoping that this would put them maybe at 20,000. And because, hey, they did anticipate bigger crowds, they hired security for 35,000.
Which I heard that the security head just laughed at the owner, like, yeah, you're going to get 35.
Yeah, they weren't. That would have been triple of what they normally get.
Exactly. Well, double, but Jerry's not good at math.
Hey, well, an estimated 50,000 or more showed up. Some people actually sneaking in, jumping over turnstiles, and the crowd was crazy. And, not all those people were there for the baseball. So already there were challenges at the first game. Some uncollected records were thrown like frisbees from the stands at various times.
Oh, that's scary.
Tigers designated hitter Rusty Staub suggested that teammates wear batting helmets while in the field.
Oh, no.
And, the game had to be stopped. This was the first game a few times because liquor bottles, firecrackers, records, just all found their way on the field.
Sounds like when the Eagles play the Giants or something.
They're throwing snowballs at Santa.
Snowballs, exactly.
Well, Detroit won the first game despite a few stoppages, 4-1. And sure enough, at 8:40 p.m., Steve Dahl comes out between the game. He's in a Jeep with his partner. He's in fatigues, an Army helmet, and he's leading the crowd in Disco Sucks. As stuff is thrown at him, he says lovingly. So they gather everything in this bin in center field, and they're blown up. It's blown up. And after that, chaos is ensued. First of all, it tore a hole right in the center field grass.
When I saw it on video, stuff is exploding all over the place. I don't know what their plans were for cleaning that up were going to be. It was a mess everywhere.
I don't know they had a great plan.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
And they certainly didn't have a great plan when thousands of fans or attendees rushed the field. As you can imagine, bases are pulled up, stolen, a batting cage was destroyed, people are climbing the foul poles. It was mass hysteria, cats and dogs living together, as they say in Ghostbuster. You have announcer Harry Carey on the PA system, Bill Veeck urging people to return to their seats. Eventually, police and riot gear come at 9:08. That's what, 30 minutes later almost. And dispersing the crowd, they arrest 39 people. Again, a little trivia as I break in there. Actor Michael Clark Duncan, Brooke?
Yeah, from the Green Mile and Talladega Nights.
Yeah. Unfortunately, late actor and giant of a man, right. He actually was on the field that night. He was one of the people who rushed there. He says he walked away with a free bat.
Good for him.
although the bat wasn't a stadium giveaway. So finally, the police chase everyone up. They're working frantically at cleaning things up. You still got this destroyed center field. Veeck wanted the second game against the Tigers played. But Tigers manager Sparky Henderson said no. I mean, safety, he could not ensure his team's safety. The field was a mess despite their efforts. So he called American League President Lee MacPhail, and they decided initially to postpone the game.
Well, the other issue coming up was they had a 1 a.m. curfew, and they didn't feel with cleanup that the game was going to be able to start and finish before 1 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, good point. It delayed everything. Well, Anderson was persistent and actually working with MacPhail got the game forfeited because Anderson's point was, hey, this wasn't an act of God. This wasn't a city restriction. This was the White Sox not providing a good playing environment, field safety, etc.
That makes sense.
So the Tigers won 9-0. Veeck was not happy. Chicago was not happy. And 46 years later, this is still the last American League game forfeited. Needless to say, we haven't had any more blowing up of records,
Well, I guess our music has gotten better. Plus, no more records anymore. That would have been a mess blowing up cassette tapes.
That's right.
With the little reel stuff all over the place.
They didn't have Demolition Wang Chung Night or Macarena Night. You could have blown up those records.
Oh, gosh.
Although, again, no records then.
No, yep.
Well, again, that was the last American League game forfeited, but what was the last Major League Baseball game forfeited in general? Also, as you might imagine, since they try to avoid forfeits, an interesting situation that was August 10th, 1995, in a game with the Cardinals versus the Dodgers. Now, a few words about forfeit in Major League.
Wait, you're just going to leave me on that? Why was it forfeited?
We're going to get to it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Now you go.
I got to go look ahead in my notes here. I want to see.
Now we're going flashback. You got the hazy screen like on TV.
Go for it.
Well, forfeits in Major League Baseball were not exactly rare early on in that 19th century. There were probably like 3 to 4 forfeits every year on average. In 1884, there were actually 13 forfeits. But in the 20th century, this was not something that the league wanted in their game. So in the 1960s, there was actually no forfeits. Of course, you had this famous American League game here with Disco Demolition Night. But in 1995, Brooke, now here we go.
Okay, I'm focused.
The Dodgers were in a tight race at that time, one game behind the Rockies to head up the West. Both would eventually make the playoffs, and the Dodgers would wind up winning the West. But this was Hideo Nomo's rookie year. He'd wind up winning Rookie of the Year award that year. And 53,000 fans went to Dodger Stadium to see Nomo. And at the time, there was a souvenir ball giveaway.
A baseball, I assume, not a beach ball.
No, souvenir balls. Yeah, baseball.
Oh.
Solid, good old solid baseball.
What could go wrong
there?
Fans,
you've probably been to giveaway days, and there are jerseys and bobbleheads, and you probably don't remember too many baseball giveaways. And
no.
In the past 30 years, and maybe there's a reason for that. So,
do tell us more. You got me on the edge of my chair.
So the Dodgers are behind the Cardinals that day, 2-1 in the bottom of the 8th with 2 runners on. Again, tight race with the Rockies for number 1 in the West. And umpire Jim Quick calls a strike on a check swing by Eric Karros. This led to words and a batter ejection, and lo and behold, some balls are thrown on the field. Then in the bottom of the 9th, the Dodgers are coming up again. Quick calls 2 outside strikes, which led from a hitter's count of 3-0 all of a sudden to full count 3-2. Eventually, the batter strikes out. He has words with the batter. He has words with the umpire. Then manager Tommy Lasorda, always the calmest demeanor.
Yes.
He comes out. He's ejected. Well, souvenir baseballs start raining down on the field. They were given to kids 14 and under that day, but I think the parents may have taken them away from their kids to make a statement. And so the balls had to be cleaned up. So this led to game delays, Lasorda's ejected. It looked like the game was going to resume, and then another ball comes down from the bleacher. Well, the umpire calls the game, and it gets forfeited in favor of the Cardinals. Oh, man. Interestingly, the Cardinals had a 9-game road trip. That was their only win, the forfeit that year. And that was the first forfeit in the National League in 41 years, and still the last forfeit to this day in Major League Baseball.
Wow. Interesting.
So I don't know what the lesson here is, but I'm sure people who design gimmick days and fan giveaways really think about these things now when they come up with these great ideas.
I'm sure they make sure they're not aerodynamic to reach more than like two rows of seats to be thrown.
And bobbleheads are so expensive. No one's throwing those.
No one's getting rid of those. Those go on eBay.
Yeah, and you really can't get much velocity on like the basketball jerseys they're giving out.
No, or the Hello Kitty pocketbooks they're throwing. They have sometimes. Yeah, I get it.
Well, a good episode today. Again, looking at a strange moment, but really an iconic moment that is remembered decades later in Major League Baseball history. Thanks always to my producer, Brooke.
You're welcome.
And shout out especially to my brother Daniel in New Jersey, who assured me he'd be listening.
Hey, Daniel.
I hope you'll keep listening. Don't forget to like us and subscribe on your podcast platform. Heading back to the locker room, this is Jerry Dines and Fungos and Fastballs.